The carpet beneath my worn sneakers cost more than everything I owned. I knew this because I'd spent 3 years restoring a 15th century illuminated manuscript for a collector who casually mentioned his hotel's hallway runner was hand-woven Persian silk. The same collector who'd introduced me to Kieran at a gallery opening, setting off the chain of events that led to this moment. Me, Serafina Chen, sprinting down the VIP corridor of the Sterling Grand at 11 p.m., my heart trying to escape my chest. "Sarah, wait." Kieran's voice echoed off marble walls, closer than it should be. "We need to talk." We'd already talked. 6 months of talking while he slowly isolated me from friends, questioned my work hours, showed up unannounced at the rare books library where I restored centuries-old texts with hands steadier than my nerves right now. The talking ended 2 weeks ago, when I finally gathered the courage to leave, to reclaim the quiet life I'd built before him. But Kieran didn't accept endings. My phone buzzed for the 15th time tonight, his name flashing across the screen. I'd made the mistake of agreeing to meet him for closure at the hotel bar downstairs, neutral territory, public space, safe. Except he'd cornered me near the elevators, his fingers wrapping around my wrist with that familiar pressure that walked the line between concern and control. I'd pulled away and run. The corridor stretched endlessly before me, doors marked with brass numbers gleaming under crystal sconces. Every sound amplified, my ragged breathing, the soft thud of Kieran's dress shoes against silk carpet, the mechanical hum of the elevator behind me delivering him to this floor. A service door appeared on my right, unmarked, save for a discreet brass handle. Without thinking, I grabbed it, twisted, and stumbled into darkness. The space was smaller than expected, barely larger than a walk-in closet. My hands found smooth wood paneling, the whisper of expensive fabric, the cool metal of what felt like hangers, a storage closet for linens perhaps, or a discreet staging area for the hotel's impeccable service. I pulled the door shut behind me, pressing my back against it as I fumbled for the lock. My fingers found the mechanism and turned it just as Kieran's footsteps paused outside. "Sarah?" His voice was soft, coaxing, the tone that had once made me feel cherished before I learned it was rehearsed. "I know you're upset. Let's just talk. 5 minutes." I held my breath, counting heartbeats in the darkness. The closet smelled of cedar and something else, something masculine and expensive that didn't belong in a storage space. My pulse hammered in my ears as I waited for Kieran to try the handle, to demand I open the door, to make a scene that would draw hotel security. Instead, his footsteps retreated down the corridor, growing fainter until silence reclaimed the space. I exhaled shakily, my legs suddenly unreliable. I slid down the door until I sat on what felt like plush carpet, my forehead dropping to my knees. The adrenaline that had carried me through the lobby, the elevator, the desperate sprint, was draining away, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Most people knock before entering my private viewing room. The voice came from my left, deep and controlled, with an accent that softened certain consonants the way old money softens its consonants. Barely, but unmistakably present. I screamed. Not loud enough to be heard through the heavy door, but sharp enough that my throat protested. My phone clattered from my grip as I scrambled backward, hitting what I now realized wasn't a wall, but a person's legs. "Don't." The command was quiet, but absolute. A hand, warm and impossibly steady, settled on my shoulder. "Breathe. You're hyperventilating." Light flooded the space as he flicked a switch I hadn't found. I blinked against the sudden brightness, my vision adjusting to reveal not a storage closet, but a small, elegantly appointed room. A viewing room, he'd called it. Leather armchairs faced a wall of illuminated displays showcasing what appeared to be rare watches behind glass. A small bar cart held crystal decanters. The carpet beneath me was midnight blue and thick enough to sink into. And standing above me, his hand still on my shoulder, was a man who looked like he'd stepped from the pages of the Italian fashion magazines my mother used to page through during her lunch breaks at the bakery where she worked before the accident. He was tall, perhaps 33 or 34, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble if marble could look dangerous. His eyes were the gray of storm clouds, assessing me with the same clinical precision I used when examining damaged manuscript pages for restoration potential. He wore a black shirt unbuttoned at the throat, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms that suggested he used his hands for more than signing papers, and tailored trousers that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "I'm sorry," I managed, my voice embarrassingly small. "I didn't know anyone was in here. I'll go." I tried to stand, but my legs were still shaking, and I stumbled. His hand moved from my shoulder to my elbow, steadying me with a grip that was firm without being threatening. "You're running from someone," he observed, releasing me once I'd regained my balance. It wasn't a question. I nodded, retrieving my phone from where it had fallen near his leather Oxfords. "My ex. He followed me here. I needed somewhere to hide until he left." "Does he hurt you?" Again, not a question, but something sharper. His eyes had moved to my wrist, where Kieran's fingers had left faint red marks earlier. "Not physically," I said, then immediately felt stupid for the qualifier. "He's just persistent, possessive. I ended things 2 weeks ago, but he won't accept it." The man's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air between us. He crossed to the bar cart with movements that reminded me of the big cats I'd seen at the zoo as a child. Unhurried, economical, predatory. "Sit." He gestured to one of the leather chairs. "Your ex will search the public areas first. You'll need to wait at least 20 minutes before it's safe to leave." I should have left immediately. Should have thanked him for his patience and found another way out of the hotel. But my legs were still trembling, and the chair looked impossibly inviting, and there was something about his calm certainty that made the panic in my chest ease slightly. I sat. He poured amber liquid into 2 glasses, then handed one to me. "Drink. Not much. Just enough to steady your nerves." I accepted the glass, taking a cautious sip. The whiskey burned pleasantly, spreading warmth through my chest. "I don't usually drink." "I can tell." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly, not quite a smile. "You hold it like it might bite you." Despite everything, I almost laughed. "Books don't bite. I'm better with books than whiskey." "Books." He settled into the opposite chair, his own glass held loosely between long fingers. "What do you do with books?" "I restore them. Rare manuscripts mostly. Medieval and Renaissance texts." I took another small sip, feeling the warmth spread to my limbs. The kind that are falling apart from age and handling, that need someone patient enough to save them page by page. "Patient," he repeated, as if testing the word. "And gentle, I imagine. Careful." "Very." I met his eyes, finding them less intimidating than before, though no less intense. "Some pages are so fragile they'll disintegrate if you breathe on them wrong. You have to know exactly how much pressure to apply, when to reinforce, when to leave things alone." I see the appeal. He sipped his whiskey, never breaking eye contact. "I collect rare pieces myself. Watches mostly, as you've noticed. Each one tells a story about the hands that made it, the era it survived." I glanced at the illuminated displays, recognizing names I'd seen in auction catalogs my mentor sometimes showed me. Patek Philippe, Audemars Piguet, pieces worth 6 figures or more. "These are incredible. They're insurance against forgetting." He set his glass down with deliberate care. "Time passes regardless of whether we acknowledge it. These pieces prove that someone, somewhere, devoted their life to capturing that passage with precision." There was something almost melancholy in the observation, at odds with the controlled power he projected. I found myself leaning forward slightly. Do you worry about forgetting? I worry about many things. His gaze drifted to the watches, then back to me. Forgetting is merely one of them. My phone buzzed on my lap, making me jump. Kieran's name flashed across the screen along with a text. I'm waiting in the lobby. We're going to talk, Sarah. I'm not leaving until we do. The stranger noticed my reaction. Your ex? I nodded, my earlier calm evaporating. He says he's waiting in the lobby. He's not going to leave. Then we'll wait longer. He rose and moved to a panel on the wall, pressing something that made a small screen illuminate. Security camera feeds, I realized, showing various angles of the hotel's public spaces. He found the lobby view and adjusted it, revealing Kieran pacing near the front entrance, his phone pressed to his ear. That him? The stranger asked. Yes. I set my glass down, wrapping my arms around myself. I'm sorry for intruding on your evening. I should probably just call hotel security. And say what? He turned from the screen, his expression unreadable. That your ex-boyfriend won't leave you alone? They'll ask if he's threatened you, if you have a restraining order. Do you? I shook my head. Then they'll suggest you use another exit and hope he doesn't follow. He returned to his chair, studying me with that same clinical assessment. Your ex knows what he's doing. He's chosen his battlefield carefully. Public enough that you can't accuse him of anything criminal. Persistent enough to wear you down. The accuracy of the observation sent a chill through me. You sound like you've seen this before. I've seen many things. He picked up his glass again, including women who needed sanctuary but didn't know how to ask for it. Something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. The expensive watch on his wrist. The private viewing room in a hotel that catered to the city's elite. The ease with which he'd accessed security feeds. The controlled danger that radiated from him even in stillness. Who are you? I asked quietly. Someone who appreciates careful, gentle things. His eyes held mine. Someone who finds patience admirable. Someone whose schedule tonight was empty until an interesting woman locked herself in my viewing room. It wasn't an answer, but it also wasn't a deflection. There was invitation in the space between his words, a dare wrapped in courtesy. I'm Serafina, I offered, not sure why except that the silence felt like it needed filling. Everyone calls me Sarah. Serafina. He tested my full name, giving it Italian emphasis that made it sound like music. Burning one. Appropriate for someone who works with the fragile remnants of history. And you are? He smiled then, properly, and it transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. You can call me Ravenna. Most people who enter my private spaces don't leave without learning at least that much. 2 hours passed in that room, measured not by the passage of time, but by the gradual lowering of my guard. Ravenna proved to be an unexpected conversationalist, drawing me out with questions about manuscript restoration that revealed genuine interest rather than polite tolerance. I found myself describing the thrill of discovering hidden text beneath overwritten pages, the patience required to separate parchment that had fused over centuries, the satisfaction of watching illegible words emerge, letter by careful letter. You speak about your work the way some people speak about lovers, he observed at one point, refilling my water glass from a pitcher that had appeared on the bar cart along with a plate of fruit and cheese I didn't remember seeing before. Books don't leave, I said without thinking, then immediately regretted the confession. His eyes sharpened. But people do. People leave. I selected a grape, needing somewhere to direct my gaze. Books stay where you put them, assuming you care for them properly. They don't change their minds, or decide you're too quiet, or too intense, or too whatever they've decided you are this week. Your ex called you too quiet? Among other things. I ate the grape, surprised by its sweetness. Toward the end, Everything about me was too something, too focused on work, too selective about friends, too boring for parties. It was like he'd decided I was a project that had failed to meet specifications. Ravenna leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. And before he decided you were deficient, I assume he made you feel exceptional. The accuracy of the observation made my chest tight. How did you know? Because that's how it works. His voice remained conversational, but there was steel underneath. First they isolate you with attention so complete you forget other people exist. Then they start reshaping you, subtle critiques wrapped in concern. By the time you realize the cage has closed, you've forgotten how to pick the lock. I stared at him, recognition flooding through me. You're describing exactly what happened. I know. He set his glass down with controlled precision. I've built cages myself, Serafina. Different kinds, different purposes, but the mechanism is the same. The difference is I'm honest about the bars. The confession should have frightened me. Instead, I found it oddly comforting, like the moment in restoration when you finally identify the nature of the damage and can begin planning repair. Why are you being kind to me? I asked. You don't know me. I invaded your private space. You could have had security remove me hours ago. I could have. He studied me with that same careful assessment. But then I would have missed a fascinating evening. It's not often someone surprises me, Serafina. You've managed it twice now. First by appearing in my sanctuary uninvited, second by being exactly as you presented yourself. No pretense, no calculation, just honest fear and honest gratitude. That's unusual in your world? I regretted the question immediately, aware I was prying into territory he might not want examined. But Ravenna smiled. My world is built on pretense and calculation. Everyone wants something. Everyone has angles. You burst in here wanting only safety, and you've spent 2 hours asking for nothing except permission to stay until your ex leaves. It's refreshing. He rose and moved to the security screen, checking the lobby feed. Kieran was no longer visible. Your hunter has abandoned his post. Either he's given up for the night or he's repositioned somewhere less obvious. I stood as well, suddenly aware of how long I'd been in this room, in this man's presence, in this strange, suspended reality. I should go. Thank you for letting me hide here, and for the conversation. It's been the most normal I've felt in weeks. Normal. He turned from the screen, one eyebrow raised. Is that what you're calling this? Despite everything, I laughed. Abnormal, then, but in a good way. Serafina. He moved closer, not crowding but present, impossible to ignore. Your ex is persistent. He'll find you again. Tomorrow, next week, next month. Men like him don't surrender territory they consider theirs. I know. The admission felt like defeat. But what choice do I have? I can't hide forever. You could hide longer with the right protection. His eyes held mine, intent and calculating. I have a proposition for you. Not tonight. You're exhausted, and I want you clear-headed when you consider it. But take my card. If you're interested in a solution to your problem, call me tomorrow. He produced a business card from his pocket, plain black with raised silver text. No title, just a name and phone number. I took it, feeling the expensive weight of the cardstock. What kind of solution? I asked warily. The kind that benefits us both. He moved to the door, unlocking it with a key I hadn't noticed him using. Go home, Serafina. Sleep if you can. Tomorrow, when you're thinking clearly, ask yourself if you're willing to trade one cage for another, if the second cage comes with protection and resources, and the guarantee that Kieran will never touch you again. My heart kicked against my ribs. What are you asking me to do? I'm asking you to call me tomorrow. He held the door open, that almost smile playing at the corner of his mouth. The rest we'll discuss then. Go now, while the lobby is clear. And Serafina, use the east exit. Your ex will be watching the main entrance. I slipped past him into the corridor, clutching his card like a talisman. The VIP floor was silent, all those numbered doors hiding their own secrets behind brass and mahogany. When I glanced back, Ravenna was still standing in the doorway of his viewing room, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Tomorrow, he said quietly. I nodded and walked away, my sneakers silent on Persian silk, his card burning against my palm. I didn't sleep. How could I, with Ravenna's proposition circling my mind like a mystery text waiting to be decoded? I sat at my tiny desk in my tiny apartment, surrounded by the tools of my trade, magnifying lenses, specialized brushes, archival glue that cost more than my monthly groceries. My hands, usually so steady, trembled as I turned his card over and over. What was he offering? And what would it cost me? The answers came at dawn, delivered not by phone call but by a knock at my door. I checked the peephole and found a woman in her 50s standing in the hallway, elegant in a charcoal suit, holding a manila envelope. Miss Chen? Her voice was professional, efficient. I'm here on behalf of Mr. Ravenna. He asked me to deliver this with his apologies for the early hour and his assurance that you're under no obligation to accept. I opened the door enough to take the envelope, curiosity overriding caution. What is this? An opportunity. She inclined her head. Good morning, Miss Chen. She was gone before I could formulate another question, leaving me standing in my doorway with the envelope weighing heavy in my hands. Inside, I found 3 items: a letter, a contract, and a photograph. The photograph showed a woman perhaps my age, beautiful in the polished way of old money, sleek dark hair, designer dress, smile that looked practiced. Written on the back in elegant script, Isabella Marchetti, daughter of my oldest enemy. The alliance neither family wants, but both will honor unless I present an alternative. I set the photo aside and unfolded the letter. Ravenna's handwriting was precise, each word deliberately placed. Serafina, forgive the dramatic presentation, but efficiency serves us both now. The simple version. I'm expected to marry Isabella Marchetti within 6 months to secure a business alliance between my family's interests and her father's. This marriage would benefit everyone except me and Isabella, neither of whom chose it, and neither of whom have the power to refuse it without severe consequences. You need protection from a man who won't let you go. I need freedom from a future I don't want. We can provide these things for each other. The attached contract outlines my proposal. You agree to act as my fiancé for 8 months. We'll announce our engagement publicly, attend necessary social functions together, and maintain the appearance of a genuine relationship. In exchange, I guarantee Kieran will never contact you again, provide you with appropriate security, housing, and financial support during our arrangement, and ensure that when our engagement ends, you'll have the resources to start over wherever you choose. The contract includes protections for both parties. You're free to continue your work. Your privacy will be respected. Physical intimacy is not required or expected. This is theater, not reality. You may end the arrangement at any time if you feel unsafe or uncomfortable with compensation intact. I know this sounds insane. I know you have no reason to trust a stranger who keeps watches in a private room and speaks casually about building cages. But consider this: 8 months of performance in exchange for permanent freedom from the man who frightens you. 8 months playing a role in exchange for enough money to open your own restoration studio. 8 months of protection in exchange for protecting me from a future neither of us chose. I'm not a good man, Serafina. But I keep my word. And right now, my word is the most valuable thing I can offer you. Call the number on my card before noon if you're interested. Don't call if you're not. Either way, Kieran received a visit this morning from associates of mine who explained that harassing you further would be detrimental to his health, Consider that a gift with no strings attached. Yours in possibility are. I read the letter 3 times, then examined the contract. It was exactly as described. Clear terms, defined duration, protections built in, financial compensation that made my breath catch. Enough money to not just survive, but thrive. Enough to finally open the restoration studio I'd dreamed about since graduate school, but never had the capital to launch. 8 months. 8 months of pretending to be engaged to a man I'd spent 2 hours with. 8 months in a world I didn't understand, playing a role I'd never auditioned for. 8 months as the fiancé of someone powerful enough to make Kieran disappear with a phone call. My phone rang at 7 a.m. Kieran's name flashed across the screen, then immediately cut off mid-ring. When I checked, I found the number was now blocked. Not by me, but by someone else. Someone with the technical capability and authority to erase Kieran from my phone entirely. Ravenna had already begun protecting me, even before I'd agreed to anything. I picked up his card and dialed. He answered on the first ring. Serafina. This is insane, I said without preamble. Yes. I don't know you. Not yet. I've never been an actress. I'm terrible at lying. I'll give us away immediately. You won't. His voice held complete certainty. You'll be yourself. Just yourself in a context that happens to include me. That's all anyone will see. I paced my tiny apartment, the phone pressed to my ear. Why me? You could hire a professional for this. Someone used to playing roles. Because professionals look like professionals. I heard him moving, the rustle of fabric, the clink of coffee cup against saucer. I need someone real. Someone soft and genuine and completely unlike the women in my usual circles. Someone who makes me look like I've chosen substance over polish. You're perfect for that. I'm not sure that's a compliment. It wasn't meant as one or an insult. Simply observation. He paused. Are you calling to negotiate or to decline? I'm calling because I'm terrified and tempted in equal measure. I stopped at my window, looking out at the city waking below. And because I can't stop thinking that maybe being in a cage where I know the bars are there is better than the cage I was in, where I couldn't see them until it was too late. Wise woman. His voice softened slightly. There's a car waiting downstairs if you'd like to discuss details in person. Or we can handle everything by phone if you prefer. Your choice, Serafina. It will always be your choice. I looked at my reflection in the window glass. Small, uncertain, afraid. But underneath, burning steady, the same determination that made me choose this lonely profession, that made me spend years learning to repair what others had damaged, that made me leave Kieran even though it meant starting over with nothing. I'll be down in 10 minutes, I said. Take 20, I heard the smile in his voice. You'll want to bring the contract. I imagine you have questions. The car was midnight blue and driven by a man who introduced himself as Marco, before opening the rear door with the quiet efficiency of someone accustomed to ferrying precious cargo. I slid across leather that probably cost more than my monthly rent, clutching the manila envelope against my chest. Ravenna sat in the opposite corner, dressed more casually than last night. Charcoal sweater over a white shirt, dark trousers, the same watch I'd noticed before. In daylight streaming through tinted windows, he looked simultaneously younger and more dangerous, the kind of beautiful that belonged on currency or in oil paintings commissioned by families who'd held power for centuries. You came, he observed as Marco pulled into traffic. I have questions. I would be concerned if you didn't. He gestured to the contract in my hands. Ask. I opened it to the page I'd marked. Clause 7 states I'm required to attend family functions and public events with you. How many are we talking about? 4 to 6 per month initially, tapering to 2 or 3 after the first 60 days once the engagement is established. Dinners with my mother, charity galas, occasional business functions where appearing settled and domesticated serves strategic purposes, And I'm supposed to know how to behave at these events? You're supposed to be yourself. He accepted a coffee cup from a holder built into the door panel, offering me the second one. That's the entire point. You'll be the woman I chose because she's different from what's expected of me. Smart instead of decorative. Genuine instead of calculating. Interested in 14th century manuscripts instead of Fashion Week. I took the coffee, surprised when it was exactly the way I liked it. Light, slightly sweet. You remember my coffee preference from 2 hours of conversation? I remember everything about those 2 hours. His eyes held mine over the rim of his cup. Including the way you talked about your work. That passion, that specificity. That's what will make this convincing. No one who knows me will believe I chose a woman who's anything like the ones I'm expected to marry. Because you're choosing the opposite? I asked carefully. Because I'm choosing what I actually find interesting. He set his cup down. Next question. I flipped pages. Physical contact. The contract says appropriate public affection will be required to maintain the illusion. Define appropriate. Hand holding. My arm around you when we're walking. Sitting close at dinners. A kiss on the forehead or cheek in public. Nothing that makes you uncomfortable. We'll establish signals. You'll have ways to indicate you need space, and I'll respect them immediately. And in private? In private, we're two people living separate lives under one roof. You'll have your own suite, your own space. Your work will be undisturbed. I have no expectations of intimacy, Serafina. This is a business arrangement that happens to include affection as one of its deliverables. The clinical description should have been reassuring. Instead, it felt oddly hollow. I shook off the feeling. Housing. The contract mentions appropriate accommodations. What does that mean? I have a penthouse at the Sterling Grand, the hotel where we met. You'll have a suite there. 2 bedrooms, office space, full kitchen, balcony overlooking the city. Private entrance if you prefer not to use the main lobby. Security, obviously. Obviously, I echoed faintly, trying to imagine living in a hotel penthouse. Trying to imagine living anywhere with this man. You can redecorate as you like, he continued. Make it yours for however long you're there. The goal is for you to be comfortable, not imprisoned. Just imprisoned by contract, I muttered. A contract you can end at any time. He leaned forward slightly. Serafina, I need you to understand something. Yes, this arrangement benefits me enormously. It frees me from an alliance I don't want. But I'm not interested in buying a person. I'm interested in hiring a very skilled actor for a very specific role. You'll be compensated generously for your time and talent. That's all this is. Is it? I set the contract aside, meeting his eyes directly. Because last night, you said you built cages. You said you weren't a good man. You made someone block Kieran from contacting me with a phone call. What exactly do you do, Ravenna? What am I agreeing to be associated with? For a long moment he was silent, studying me with that same clinical precision. Then he leaned back, his expression unreadable. I manage my family's interests. Import-export, primarily, with investments in real estate, hospitality, and various industries that benefit from careful oversight. Some of those interests operate in gray areas. Some exist in spaces where law and commerce find creative accommodations with each other. You're saying you're a criminal. I'm saying I operate in the same spaces where most wealthy families operate, but with more honesty about the mechanisms involved. His voice remained conversational. I don't pretend my empire is built entirely on legitimate foundations. I don't hide behind euphemisms about diversified portfolios when what I mean is strategic influence. But I also don't traffic in human suffering. I don't deal in drugs or exploitation. I build structures that powerful people need, and I ensure those structures are stable. And Isabella Marchetti's father does exactly the same thing from a different position. Ravenna's expression hardened slightly. Our families have been rivals for 3 generations. This marriage alliance is meant to end that rivalry by merging interests. Neither Isabella nor I want that merger. But refusing it comes with consequences neither of us are prepared to face alone. What consequences? War. He said it simply, without drama. Business war, which sounds civilized until you understand what it means. Assets frozen, contracts dissolved, people who depend on both families for employment suddenly finding themselves without protection. It escalates quickly, Serafina. People get hurt. I absorbed this, my coffee cooling in my hands. So you're using me as a shield. I'm offering you a shield in exchange for you being mine, he corrected. 8 months where we protect each other from futures we don't want. That's the transaction. The car had been moving this entire time, and I suddenly realized we were pulling into an underground garage beneath the Sterling Grand. Marco parked in a space marked reserved, private, then came around to open my door. Last question before you decide, Ravenna said, not moving to exit yet. What happened with your ex? The truth. I need to know what I'm protecting you from. I looked down at my hands, at the faint scars from years of handling old paper and sharp restoration tools. Kieran was controlling, but not violent, not physically. He just slowly made my world smaller until the only thing in it was him. When I finally left, he couldn't accept it. He'd show up at work, at my apartment, at the library where I volunteered. Always with good reasons. He'd forgotten something. He wanted to talk. He was worried about me. But underneath every reason was the same message. You don't get to leave me. And when I had him blocked from your phone this morning, he called 37 times between midnight and 6 a.m. The number had shocked me when I'd checked the blocked log. I'm guessing your associates made sure he understands he can't do that anymore. My associates made sure he understands many things he can't do anymore. Ravenna's voice had gone cold. Including approaching you, contacting you indirectly, or making any attempt to locate you. He's been informed that continued interest in you will result in professional consequences he won't enjoy. Is that acceptable to you, or would you prefer something more? Definitive. The offer beneath the offer made my skin prickle. What you've already done is enough. I don't want him hurt. I just want him gone from my life. Then he's gone. Ravenna finally moved, exiting the car with fluid grace. Anything else is your choice. Marco will drive you home if you've decided against this arrangement. Or you can come upstairs and see what 8 months of theater looks like. Your decision, Serafina. I sat in that expensive car in that secure garage, contract in one hand and cooling coffee in the other, and realized I'd already decided. Maybe I'd decided the moment I'd run into his viewing room last night. Maybe I'd decided when I'd read his letter this morning and recognized the same desperate bargaining I'd used with myself when leaving Kieran. Anything was better than staying. Show me upstairs, I said. His smile was slow and satisfied. Wise woman. The penthouse suite was beautiful in the way museums were beautiful, designed for display rather than living. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city from 60 floors up. The living room alone was larger than my entire apartment, decorated in shades of cream and slate, with carefully chosen artwork and furniture that looked untouched. A grand piano sat near the windows, its black lacquer gleaming. Do you play? I asked, gesturing at it. My mother insisted on lessons. Ravenna removed his jacket, draping it over a chair. I practice occasionally when I can't sleep. The suite is soundproofed, so it won't disturb you. Where is my suite? He led me down a hallway lined with more artwork. Through an archway, a completely separate living space opened up. Smaller than the main area, but still luxurious, with its own entrance, bathroom, and a room that made my breath catch. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, empty but ready. A restoration workspace occupied the far corner. Specialized lighting, magnification equipment, storage for materials and tools. In the center, an antique writing desk faced windows overlooking the city. I took the liberty of consulting an expert on proper restoration workspace design, Ravenna said behind me. If anything is wrong or missing, we'll correct it immediately. I moved to the desk, running my fingers over wood that was old but perfectly maintained. This is a 19th century secretary desk, the kind scholars used for manuscript work. I thought you might appreciate the historical accuracy. He remained near the doorway, giving me space to explore. The bookshelves are for your collection. I understand you have several boxes of personal volumes you couldn't display in your old apartment. How do you know that? I did my research last night after you left. He said it without apology. If we're doing this, Serafina, I needed to know who you really are, what you love, what you need to be comfortable. The desk, the workspace, the shelves, they're not bribes. They're infrastructure. You'll be spending 8 months here. It should feel like your space, not a hotel. I turned to face him, this beautiful, dangerous man who'd somehow understood exactly what I needed. When did you plan all this? We just talked this morning. I planned it last night after you left. He moved into the room, but slowly, letting me track his approach. I knew you'd call, not because you're desperate, you're not, but because you're practical. You weigh options carefully, you understand cost-benefit analysis, and the cost of 8 months playing my fiancé is significantly less than the benefit of never dealing with your ex again. You're very certain of yourself. I'm very good at reading people. He stopped near the window, backlit by morning sun. And you, Serafina, are exactly what you appear to be. That's rare enough in my world that I recognized it immediately. What if I'm a better actress than you think? The challenge escaped before I could stop it. What if I'm exactly the kind of calculating person you say I'm not? Then you'd have negotiated harder on the contract terms. He smiled slightly. You'd have asked for more money, better accommodations, written guarantees about every detail. Instead, your questions were about frequency of appearances and physical boundaries. You're not trying to maximize benefit. You're trying to minimize risk. That tells me everything I need to know. He was right, which was simultaneously reassuring and unsettling. I crossed to the workspace, examining the equipment. Everything was top of the line, exactly what I would have chosen if money were no object. I'll need to move my things from my apartment, I said, and I have active projects, manuscripts on deadline. Marco will coordinate the move. Your work continues undisturbed. That was in the contract. In fact, maintaining your professional reputation enhances our story. I'm not asking you to become someone else, just to let me stand beside you in public and occasionally hold your hand. And in return, you get to avoid marrying Isabella Marchetti. And you get to avoid ever seeing Kieran again. He moved to stand across the desk from me. Fair trade, Serafina? I looked at him, really looked at him, trying to see past the beautiful, dangerous exterior to whatever lay underneath. He returned the examination calmly, letting me search for red flags or warning signs, or any indication that this was anything other than what he'd presented. We should probably discuss logistics, I said finally. If we're announcing an engagement, people will ask questions. How did we meet? How long have we been together? They'll want a story that makes sense. We met 3 months ago at a gallery opening. He had clearly already worked this out. You were there appraising manuscripts for the exhibition. I was there because I collect rare timepieces, and the gallery owner is a business associate. We started talking about the relationship between craft and time. I asked you to dinner. We've been seeing each other quietly since then, keeping it private until we were certain. That's actually believable, because it's close enough to the truth that neither of us will stumble over the details. He pulled out his phone. We'll need photographs, social media presence, evidence of a relationship that developed organically. Marco's sister is a photographer, discreet, talented. She can create what we need to establish the timeline. You've really thought of everything. I've had months to plan this escape route. You're the final piece. He extended his hand across the desk. Do we have an agreement, Serafina? I looked at his hand, then at the room he'd designed for me, then at the contract that promised 8 months of protection in exchange for 8 months of performance. Kieran's 37 blocked calls echoed in my memory. The cage I'd escaped, the one I could never fully leave as long as he refused to accept my departure. We have an agreement, I said, and placed my hand in his. The first photograph session happened that afternoon. Marco's sister Carlotta arrived with equipment and an eye for composition that immediately put me at ease. She positioned Ravenna and me near the piano, then at the window overlooking the city, then at that 19th century desk he'd acquired specifically for me. Pretend I'm not here, she instructed, her camera already clicking. Just interact naturally. Talk about something that interests both of you. Books or watches? Ravenna asked me, his hand settling at my waist as Carlotta adjusted the lighting. Both. I leaned into him slightly, trying to look comfortable with the contact. Tell me about your oldest piece, the one that started the collection. His eyes warmed as he launched into the story of a pocket watch his grandfather had carried through 2 wars, its mechanism still keeping perfect time despite 7 decades of use. I listened, genuinely fascinated, forgetting about the camera until Carlotta announced she had everything she needed. These will be perfect, she said, showing us preview images on her camera's display. You two have good chemistry. Not forced at all. I studied the photos. In them, we looked like exactly what we were pretending to be. A couple comfortable in each other's space, interested in each other's words. Ravenna's hand at my waist looked possessive but protective. My face, tilted up toward his, showed genuine engagement rather than performance. When do we announce? I asked after Carlotta left. Tomorrow night. Ravenna was reviewing something on his laptop at the dining table. My mother is hosting a dinner party. Family and close associates. We'll arrive together, present you as my fiancé. Word will spread from there. Tomorrow? My voice pitched higher than intended. That's fast. Timing matters. He closed the laptop, giving me his full attention. Isabella's father has scheduled a formal engagement announcement for next week. If we move first, we control the narrative. And your mother knows about this plan. My mother knows I refused to marry Isabella Marchetti. She doesn't know about you yet. Something complicated crossed his face. She'll adapt. My mother is remarkably good at accepting necessary fictions. I need a dress, I said, suddenly aware of the vast gap between my thrift store wardrobe and the world I was about to enter. I don't have anything appropriate for a dinner party with your family. Already handled. He rose, moving to a closet I hadn't noticed. Inside hung several garment bags. Carlotta brought options. Try them on. Keep what fits. Or we can go shopping if you prefer. The garment bags contained designer dresses in my size, each more beautiful than the last. I selected a deep green silk that made my eyes look larger, then retreated to my suite to change. When I emerged, Ravenna's expression shifted in a way I couldn't quite read. Perfect, he said quietly. You'll be the most interesting person in that room, Serafina. Let them wonder why I chose you. Let them underestimate you. I don't know if I should be flattered or insulted by that strategy. Be neither. Just be yourself. He approached, reaching up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. The gesture was careful, seeking permission through execution. That's your only job tomorrow. Be the woman I met in my viewing room. Smart, genuine, unimpressed by wealth. That's who I chose. That's who they need to see. And if they ask personal questions about my family, my background, tell the truth. His hand dropped, but he remained close. Your parents died in an accident when you were young. You were raised by your grandmother. She taught you to love books. You worked your way through graduate school. You built your career through talent and determination. None of that is shameful, Serafina. It's admirable. In your world, people might not agree. In my world, people respect power and authenticity. You have one. I have the other. Together, we make them doubt their assumptions. He smiled slightly. Now, we should practice. Practice what? Being engaged. He extended his hand. Dance with me. I don't know how to dance. Not the kind of dancing people do at dinner parties. Then I'll teach you. He moved to a sound system, selecting something slow and classical. Come here. I went to him because the alternative was refusing, and something about this man made refusal feel like backing down from a challenge I hadn't known I'd accepted. His hand found my waist, pulling me into position. His other hand caught mine, lifting it to the proper height. Follow my lead, he murmured. Feel the rhythm. Let me move you. We moved across the polished floor, my steps uncertain at first, gradually synchronizing with his. He was patient, guiding without forcing, creating space for my mistakes without drawing attention to them. The music wrapped around us like a cocoon, intimate despite the vast space. You're thinking too much, he observed. Stop counting steps. Just feel. I'm trying. Try less. Trust more. His hand pressed slightly at my waist, directing me through a turn. Better. See? You're capable of this, Serafina. You just needed permission to believe it. The dance shifted into something that felt less like practice and more like conversation conducted through touch. I found myself relaxing into his lead, letting him direct our movement while I focused on the connection between us. It felt dangerous and safe simultaneously, like standing at the edge of a cliff secured by a rope you hadn't checked the strength of. When the music ended, we stood still in the center of the room, his hand at my waist, mine on his shoulder, both breathing slightly harder than the simple dance required. Tomorrow, he said quietly, you'll do exactly that. Let me lead. Trust that I know where we're going. And if you get overwhelmed, squeeze my hand twice. I'll extract us immediately. Agreed? Agreed. He released me slowly, stepping back with what might have been reluctance. Get some rest. Tomorrow changes everything. The next evening, I stood before my mirror in the green silk dress, trying to recognize the woman looking back. Carlotta had returned to style my hair, sweeping it into an elegant updo that made me look older, more sophisticated. Makeup-enhanced features I usually ignored. The woman in the mirror could belong at a wealthy family's dinner party. But underneath the silk and styling, I was still just Sarah, still uncertain, still terrified. A knock at my door announced Ravenna's arrival. He entered at my invitation, stopping just inside the threshold. He'd changed into a midnight blue suit that emphasized his height and the breadth of his shoulders. His tie was the exact shade of my dress. Coordinated, I realized, another detail he'd considered. You look terrified, he observed. I am terrified. Good. He crossed to me, producing a small velvet box from his pocket. Fear keeps you alert, but don't let them see it. Let them see only what you choose to show. He opened the box, revealing a ring that made my breath catch. Not ostentatious, but clearly expensive. A single emerald flanked by small diamonds, set in platinum. This was my grandmother's, he said quietly. She gave it to me before she died, told me to give it to someone who deserved to wear it on merit rather than birth. I can't think of anyone who fits that description better than you. Ravenna, this is family jewelry. I can't. You can. He took my hand, sliding the ring onto my finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for me. For 8 months, Serafina, you are family. You wear this with my blessing and my grandmother's. After our arrangement ends, you return it. Simple. The ring felt heavy on my finger, weighted with history and meaning I hadn't earned. But it also felt right somehow, like the final piece of armor before battle. "Are you ready?" he asked, offering his arm. I took it, letting him lead me toward the door. "As ready as I'll ever be." "Then let's go introduce you to my family. And Serafina?" He paused at the door, meeting my eyes. "Remember, you're doing me an enormous favor. They should be grateful I found you, not questioning whether you're good enough for me. Hold that thought when they start probing." The dinner party was held at his mother's estate in the suburbs, a sprawling mansion that made the Sterling Grand look modest by comparison. Marco drove us through gates and up a circular drive where other expensive cars were already parked. My fingers found Ravenna's, squeezing once. He squeezed back. "I'm right here. You're safe." We entered together, his hand at my back, presenting a united front. The foyer alone was larger than my former apartment, all marble and crystal and artwork worth more than I'd earn in a lifetime. Voices drifted from deeper in the house, accompanied by classical music and the clink of crystal. Ravenna, finally. A woman appeared from a side room, elegant in her 60s, with silver-streaked dark hair and the same storm-gray eyes as her son. Her gaze swept over me with assessment that felt clinical. "And this must be your mysterious companion. Introduce us properly." "Mother, this is Serafina Chen. Sarah, my mother, Victoria." "Ms. Chen." Victoria extended her hand, and I shook it, noting her grip was firm and appraising. "Ravenna tells me you restore rare manuscripts. Fascinating work." "Thank you, Mrs. Victoria, please. We're about to be family, after all." Her smile was polite but cool. Though I confess I'm surprised. Ravenna doesn't usually move this quickly. "When you know, you know," Ravenna said smoothly, his hand tightening slightly at my waist. I saw no point in delaying the inevitable. How romantic. Victoria's tone suggested she found it anything but. "Come, the others are already here. They're dying to meet you, Serafina. We so rarely get to see the women who capture my son's interest." She led us through the house to a formal dining room where 8 people were already seated around a table that could have accommodated 20. Conversations halted as we entered. All eyes turned to assess the new arrival. "Everyone," Victoria announced. "This is Serafina Chen, Ravenna's fiancée." The word hung in the air, met with varying degrees of shock, curiosity, and calculation. I forced myself to smile, to meet their gazes evenly, to remember what Ravenna had said. Be yourself. Let them wonder. Let them underestimate. "Fiancé?" An older man at the head of the table, Ravenna's uncle, I would learn, set down his wineglass. "This is sudden." "Not so sudden," Ravenna replied, guiding me to 2 empty chairs. "We've been seeing each other for months. We simply preferred to keep it private until we were certain." "And now you're certain," Victoria said, taking her own seat. "How lovely." The dinner proceeded with careful civility masking obvious tension. Questions were asked with surgical precision, designed to reveal class and background and suitability. I answered them honestly, exactly as Ravenna had instructed, refusing to be ashamed of my humble origins or unglamorous profession. Halfway through the main course, a woman across the table, Ravenna's cousin Lucia, asked, "And your family, Serafina? Are they also in the restoration business?" "My parents died when I was 10, I said calmly. "My grandmother raised me. She taught me to love books before she passed 3 years ago. So no family business. Just me." The table fell silent. Lucia had the grace to look embarrassed by her probing. Ravenna's hand found mine under the table, squeezing gently. "Serafina built her career through exceptional talent and determination," he said, his voice carrying quiet warning. "She's one of the foremost manuscript restorers in her field. Museums and private collectors request her specifically. That should tell you everything you need to know about her qualifications. Of course, Victoria said smoothly. We're delighted to welcome you to the family, dear, though I do hope you'll allow us to host a proper engagement party, something that celebrates this happy occasion publicly. We'd be honored, Ravenna replied before I could. Serafina deserves to be celebrated. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of conversation I barely tracked, too focused on maintaining my performance. But gradually, I realized something. They weren't questioning whether I was good enough for Ravenna. They were questioning whether this engagement was real, whether I was genuine or just the latest in a series of strategies their brilliant, dangerous, unpredictable heir had deployed. Let them wonder, Ravenna had said. Let them underestimate you. So I smiled and answered questions, and let Ravenna's hand rest possessively at my waist. I laughed at appropriate moments and looked at him with what I hoped seemed like genuine affection. I played the role of a woman in love with a powerful man, and wondered how much of it was actually performance. After dinner, as guests gathered in the drawing room for drinks, Victoria pulled me aside with the excuse of showing me the house's library. You handled yourself well tonight, she said once we were alone among floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Better than I expected. Thank you? It wasn't a compliment. She turned to face me, her expression unreadable. My son is brilliant, but reckless. He makes decisions that serve strategic purposes rather than emotional ones. I need to know which category you fall into, Serafina. I'm not sure I understand. Are you a strategy? She asked bluntly. A convenient solution to the Isabella Marchetti problem? Or are you genuine? Because if you're the former, I need to know so I can prepare for the fallout when this inevitably ends. And if you're the latter, I need to know so I can prepare you for what it means to actually love my son. The question stripped away all pretense. I met her eyes, seeing Ravenna's sharpness reflected in them. I'm both, I admitted. We're solving problems for each other, but whether what grows from that is genuine, I don't know yet. Neither does he. Something shifted in Victoria's expression. Not warmth exactly, but respect. An honest answer, rare in this family. She moved to a shelf, selecting a leather-bound volume. This is a first edition of Petrarch's Sonnets, 1470. Ravenna told me you'd appreciate it. I took the book with reverent hands, examining the binding with professional interest. This is museum quality. The condition is remarkable. My late husband collected rare volumes. I've maintained his library, but I confess I don't have the expertise to properly care for them. She watched me examine the book. Perhaps you might advise me. Professional consultation, of course. I'd pay your usual rates. I'd be honored, I said, recognizing the olive branch for what it was. Good. Victoria retrieved the book, returning it carefully to its shelf. Then we have an understanding. You help me preserve what my husband loved. I help you navigate what loving my son might cost you. Fair trade? Very fair. She smiled then, properly, and I caught a glimpse of where Ravenna got his dangerous charm. Welcome to the family, Serafina. Whether this is theater or truth, you've made my son look at something besides his next strategic move for the first time in years. That alone earns you my gratitude. We returned to the drawing room where Ravenna was discussing something with his uncle. His eyes found mine immediately, questioning. I smiled, genuine this time, and watched relief cross his face. Later, as Marco drove us back to the city, I leaned against Ravenna's shoulder, exhausted from maintaining performance. You were perfect, he said quietly. Exactly what I knew you'd be. Your mother thinks this might be real, I murmured. Between us, or at least that it could become real. And what do you think? I considered the question, too tired for careful strategy. I think 8 months is a long time to pretend. And I think the line between performance and truth gets blurry when you're dancing with someone and they know exactly how to lead. His arm came around me, pulling me closer. Sleep, Serafina. Tomorrow we face the wider world. Tonight, you earned your rest. I closed my eyes, letting his warmth surround me, and realized I felt safer with this dangerous stranger than I'd felt in months. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it felt like the beginning of something I couldn't name yet, but was rapidly running out of excuses to deny. The engagement announcement hit society pages and social media simultaneously, carefully orchestrated through contacts Ravenna had cultivated for exactly this purpose. Within hours, my face was attached to headlines like "Mystery Woman Captures Notorious Bachelor" and "Ravenna's Surprise Engagement. Who is Serafina Chen?" "Don't read the comments," Ravenna advised that morning, finding me scrolling through my phone at the dining table. "They're not about you. They're about the story people want to tell themselves." But I read them anyway. Some were curious, others skeptical, a few surprisingly supportive. The pattern was clear. People were trying to understand why someone like Ravenna, powerful, wealthy, connected, would choose someone like me, someone ordinary. "They think I'm pregnant," I observed. "That's the prevailing theory. Shotgun engagement to avoid scandal. Let them theorize." He set coffee in front of me, exactly how I liked it. A habit he'd developed over the past week. These small gestures of attention that felt more intimate than the public hand-holding. The truth is more complicated and less interesting to gossips. "Is it?" I looked up at him. "More complicated?" Something flickered in his eyes. "We agreed to 8 months of performance, Serafina. It's been 1 week. Let's not complicate the arrangement with questions we're not ready to answer." He was right, of course. But the arrangement was already more complicated than either of us had anticipated. The easy partnership we'd developed, the comfortable silences, the way my pulse quickened when he entered a room, none of that had been in the contract. My phone rang, an unfamiliar number with my hometown area code. I answered cautiously. "Hello? Miss Chen?" A woman's voice, professional and careful. "My name is Detective Sarah Morrison. I'm calling from the police department. We need to speak with you about Kieran Walsh." My blood went cold. "What about him?" "He's missing. Has been for approximately 5 days. We're interviewing anyone who had recent contact with him." "I understand you two were involved romantically." Ravenna's attention sharpened immediately, his gaze locking on my face. "We dated," I said carefully. "I ended things about 3 weeks ago." "Why are you calling me?" "Because according to his phone records, he made numerous attempts to contact you in the days before his disappearance. The last record we have is him arriving at the Sterling Grand Hotel on the evening of..." She consulted something. "The evening you met Mr. Ravenna, actually. Interesting coincidence." "I haven't seen or spoken to Kieran since I ended our relationship," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "If he was at the Sterling Grand, I wasn't aware of it." "But you were there that night. The hotel has you on camera entering through the main lobby at approximately 10:47 p.m. I was meeting someone at the bar. I left shortly after. I didn't see Kieran." Every word was technically true. "And Mr. Ravenna? When did you meet him that evening?" Ravenna extended his hand silently. I passed him the phone. "Detective Morrison, this is Ravenna Marchetti. Miss Chen is my fiancée, and this conversation is over. If you have further questions, contact my attorneys. Their information is a matter of public record. Have a pleasant day." He ended the call before she could respond, then powered down my phone entirely. "What did you do?" I whispered. "Where is Kieran?" "I have no idea where Kieran Walsh is currently," Ravenna said, which wasn't exactly an answer. "But I did exactly what I promised you. I made sure he understood that contacting you further would have professional consequences. Professional consequences don't make people disappear for 5 days. No, they don't." He sat across from me, his expression unreadable. "But fear does. Poor decision-making does. Running from debts or obligations or any number of things does. I didn't harm your ex, Serafina. I simply made clear that his behavior toward you would no longer be tolerated. What he chose to do with that information is his business. The police think I'm involved. They think you're involved. The police think many things. Having thoughts and having evidence are different matters. He took my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. I promised you protection. That promise stands. No one is going to connect his disappearance to you or to me because there is no connection to find. Do you trust me? I don't know. The honest answer escaped before I could stop it. I don't know what you're capable of, Ravenna. I don't know where your lines are. My lines are clearly drawn. His grip tightened slightly. I don't harm people without cause. I don't engage in violence for entertainment. I don't cross boundaries that can't be uncrossed. But when someone threatens what's mine, I respond with whatever level of force necessary to make the threat stop. Always have. Always will. I'm not yours. We have a contract. You're under my protection. For purposes of this conversation, that makes you mine. He released my hand, standing. The detective will call my attorneys. They'll explain that you have no information relevant to her investigation. She'll pursue other leads. This will resolve itself. And if it doesn't, then I'll handle it. He moved toward his office, pausing at the threshold. You have a manuscript restoration consultation with my mother this afternoon at 2. Marco will drive you. Focus on that. Let me worry about everything else. He disappeared into his office, leaving me alone with my cold coffee, and the sinking feeling that I'd stepped into something far more complex than a simple arrangement between two people solving each other's problems. Victoria's library was exactly what I'd hoped for. Floor-to-ceiling shelves housing centuries of collected wisdom, everything from medieval manuscripts to early printed volumes. She greeted me warmly, a marked change from the cool assessment of our first meeting. "Thank you for coming," she said, gesturing me toward a reading table where several volumes were already laid out. "I've selected what I believe are the most fragile pieces. I'd value your professional opinion on their condition and what might be done to preserve them." For the next 2 hours, I lost myself in familiar work, examining bindings, assessing paper quality, noting areas of deterioration that could be addressed. Victoria watched with genuine interest, asking intelligent questions, taking notes on my recommendations. "You love this," she observed at one point. "Not just professionally. It brings you joy." "These books survived centuries of war, neglect, changing hands," I said, carefully turning a page in a 15th century religious text. "Every time I repair one, I'm giving it more time. More chances to be read, to be valued, to keep existing. It feels important." My late husband felt the same way. Victoria's voice softened. He'd spend hours in here, just reading. Sometimes I'd find him asleep at this table, a volume still open beneath his hand. He said books were honest in ways people rarely were. "I'm sorry for your loss. It's been 10 years. She managed a small smile. "The grief becomes part of you rather than something that crushes you. But I keep his library maintained because it was what he loved most, aside from family." We worked in companionable silence for a while. Then Victoria said, carefully casual, "Ravenna told me about the detective who called this morning." My hand stilled on the manuscript. "Did he?" "He wants me to assure you that you're safe, that this will be resolved without complication." She set down her notepad, meeting my eyes. "But I think what you actually need to know is whether my son is capable of making a person disappear. Whether you've attached yourself to someone dangerous. Is he?" The question came out whisper-soft. "Capable? Yes." Victoria's honesty was startling. "He's built an empire that requires certain flexibilities in approach. But would he harm someone without cause? No. Ravenna's violence, when he employs it, is always calculated, always strategic, never impulsive. That's not as reassuring as you think it is. It's not meant to be reassuring. It's meant to be honest. She reached across the table, covering my hand with hers. You asked him if you could trust him. The answer is yes, but with clear understanding of what you're trusting. He'll protect you with everything at his disposal. He'll honor his word to you absolutely. But he'll also do things you don't want to know about in service of that protection. Can you live with that ambiguity? I thought about Kieran's blocked calls, about the fear I'd lived with for weeks, about the relief of knowing he couldn't reach me anymore. I already am living with it. Then you're more pragmatic than I gave you credit for. Victoria squeezed my hand once before releasing it. Good. Pragmatism serves you better than idealism in this family. Now tell me about this repair technique you mentioned for leather binding. I have 3 volumes that could benefit. We returned to manuscripts, but the conversation echoed in my mind long after. Victoria had given me permission to acknowledge what I'd been trying to ignore, that Ravenna was exactly what he'd claimed to be. Dangerous, powerful, operating in gray spaces where law and ethics blurred into strategic necessity. And somehow, I was learning to be comfortable with that ambiguity. That evening, Ravenna appeared in my doorway while I was transcribing notes from Victoria's collection. How was the consultation? Productive. Your mother has some valuable pieces that need attention. I set down my pen. She also gave me a very honest assessment of what it means to be connected to your family. I imagine she did. He entered, moving to the window overlooking the city. My mother believes in informed consent. She wants you to know what you've agreed to. Even though what I've agreed to is temporary? Is it? He turned to face me, his expression unreadable. Still temporary, Serafina? After a week of this? After breakfast conversations and dancing lessons and dinners where you charmed my entire family? We have a contract. We do. He moved closer, not crowding but present. 8 months. Then you're free to walk away, resources in hand, Kieran permanently removed from your life. That was the deal. That's still the deal. Is it? He reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear in a gesture that had become familiar. Because from where I'm standing, the deal is starting to look like something else. Something neither of us anticipated. My pulse hammered at my throat. What are you saying? I'm saying that when I wake up now, my first thought is whether you're already awake, whether you'll join me for breakfast, what you'll say that will make me laugh. His hand lingered near my face. I'm saying that when I'm in business meetings, I find myself wondering what you're doing. If you're safe. If you're happy. I'm saying that the contract we signed was supposed to be theater, but somewhere in the past week, it stopped feeling like performance. Ravenna, I'm not asking you to change our agreement, he interrupted softly. I'm simply acknowledging what's happening. You feel it too. I know you do. The way you look at me when you think I'm not watching. The way you lean into me in public like it's instinct rather than choreography. The way you're sitting here now, not retreating even though I've just admitted something that makes me vulnerable. This is dangerous, I whispered. I know. His thumb traced my jawline. I built cages, remember? I know exactly how dangerous this is, for both of us. Then why? Because for the first time in years, I don't want to retreat to safety. I want to stand here with you and acknowledge that what we're building might be worth the risk. His eyes searched mine. You don't have to answer now. You don't have to answer at all. But I needed you to know that when the 8 months end, if you choose to stay, that choice will be welcome. More than welcome. He stepped back, creating distance I suddenly didn't want. Get some rest. We have the charity gala tomorrow night, the one where we'll be very publicly announced as engaged. Ravenna, I called as he reached the door. He paused. When I asked if I could trust you earlier, I was really asking if I could trust myself, if I could trust what I'm starting to feel. He turned back, his expression gentle. And can you? I don't know yet, but I'm not running away. His smile was slow and devastating. Then we're exactly where we need to be. Good night, Serafina. After he left, I sat at my desk for a long time, staring at the manuscript notes without seeing them. Somewhere in the past week, the line between performance and truth had blurred exactly as I'd feared it would. Somewhere between dancing lessons and breakfast conversations and Victoria's honest warnings, I'd started forgetting this was supposed to be temporary. And the most terrifying part wasn't that Ravenna had acknowledged it. It was that I'd been hoping he would. The charity gala at the Metropolitan Museum was everything I'd feared. Hundreds of people dressed in designer everything, champagne flowing like water, conversation layered with subtext I couldn't always decode. But Ravenna remained at my side, his hand at the small of my back, guiding me through the social minefield with patient expertise. "You're doing beautifully," he murmured as we moved from one conversation cluster to another. "Stop worrying." "I'm not worried. I'm terrified." "Good. Terror keeps you sharp." His hand tightened slightly. "The woman approaching us now is Isabella Marchetti, my former intended. Be yourself. Let her see exactly what she's competing against." I turned to find a woman in her late 20s gliding toward us, beautiful in a polished way that suggested professional styling. Her dress probably cost more than my entire education. Her smile was practiced, revealing nothing. "Ravenna," she said, air-kissing his cheeks. "Congratulations on your surprise engagement. How unexpected." "Isabella." His tone was cordial, but cool. "Thank you. May I introduce my fiancée, Serafina Chen. Sarah, this is Isabella Marchetti." Charmed, Isabella extended a perfectly manicured hand. "You're the manuscript restorer, yes? How quaint. I didn't know Ravenna was interested in such scholarly pursuits." "There's a great deal you don't know about me," Ravenna replied smoothly. "Which is precisely why our family's arrangement would never have worked. Serafina and I share interests, values, vision for the future. What we're building is authentic rather than strategic." "How romantic." Isabella's smile never wavered, but her eyes hardened. "My father will be disappointed, of course. The alliance between our families would have been beneficial for everyone." "Your father will adapt," Ravenna said, "as will mine. They're both pragmatic men who understand that forcing incompatible people together serves no one's interests. Except it does serve their interests. Business interests specifically." Isabella's gaze moved to me, assessing. "I wonder if your manuscript restorer understands what she's walked into. The enemies she's made simply by wearing your ring." "I understand enough," I said quietly. "And I'm not afraid of you, if that's what you're asking." "You should be." Her voice remained pleasant, conversational. "But perhaps that's part of your charm. Bravery born of ignorance, refreshing in its own way." "Isabella," Ravenna's voice carried warning. "We're at a charity event. Let's keep this civil." "Of course." She smiled brightly. "I wish you both every happiness, truly. These whirlwind romances either end in tragedy or triumph. I'm curious to see which yours becomes." She glided away, leaving tension in her wake. "That wasn't subtle," I observed. "Isabella has never been subtle." Ravenna's hand remained firm at my back. "She's also not dangerous. Her father, however, is a different matter. He'll view this engagement as a personal insult. We need to be careful." "How careful?" "The kind of careful that involves increased security and not going anywhere alone." He turned me to face him, his expression serious. "I know this isn't what you signed up for, but Isabella was right about one thing. You've made enemies simply by agreeing to our arrangement, If you want to end this now, before it gets more complicated, I'll understand. I looked up at him, this beautiful, dangerous man who'd somehow become familiar, whose morning coffee ritual I knew, whose smile I could predict, whose touch had started feeling like home. No, I'm not ending this. I said it firmly, surprising myself with the certainty. Whatever comes next, we face it together. That's what partners do. Something shifted in his expression. Not relief exactly, but recognition. Partners, he repeated. Is that what we are now? I think we've been partners since the night I locked myself in your viewing room. I smiled slightly. We just needed time to acknowledge it. Serafina. Whatever he was about to say was interrupted by the sudden appearance of security personnel, moving with urgent purpose through the crowd. Ravenna tensed immediately, his hand tightening on my waist. Stay close to me, he murmured. Marco appeared at Ravenna's elbow, speaking rapidly in Italian. Ravenna's expression went cold, dangerous. He responded in the same language, his voice controlled but edged with steel. What's happening? I asked. We're leaving. Now. He guided me toward the nearest exit, Marco and 2 other security personnel forming a protective barrier around us. Ravenna, you're scaring me. Good. You should be scared. We reached his car, and he practically pushed me inside before sliding in beside me. Isabella's father decided to make a statement. There's been an incident at one of my properties. No one was hurt. But the message is clear. What kind of incident? The kind that requires response. His jaw was tight, his eyes dangerous. The kind that means war if I don't handle it carefully. What are you going to do? He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. What I've always done. Protect what's mine. Eliminate threats. Make sure everyone understands that actions have consequences. Ravenna, not now Serafina. His voice was sharp, the warmth I'd grown accustomed to completely absent. I need to think. I need to plan. I need you to be silent while I figure out how to keep you safe from the disaster I've created by trying to escape my obligations. The words stung like a slap. I turned away, staring out the window as the city blurred past. Marco drove with controlled urgency, taking routes I didn't recognize, presumably to avoid anyone following us. Back at the penthouse, Ravenna disappeared into his office, barking orders in Italian to various people on speakerphone. I retreated to my suite, removing the beautiful dress and jewelry, scrubbing off makeup with more force than necessary. I'd been naive to think this arrangement would remain simple, to think that playing fiancé to a man with enemies would only involve gala appearances and practiced affection. Isabella's father had reminded us both of the stakes, and Ravenna's response had been immediate and cold, retreat into the strategic persona that had built his empire. Hours later, a soft knock announced his presence. He entered at my muted permission, looking exhausted in a way I'd never seen. He'd removed his jacket and tie, unbuttoned his shirt, rolled up his sleeves. But it was his eyes that held me, stormy, with an emotion I couldn't quite name. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for earlier, for being harsh. You didn't deserve that. You were scared. Terrified. He moved to the window, looking out at the city. Marchetti's message was clear. If I don't reconsider the engagement, people close to me become targets. You become a target. So what happens now? Now I eliminate the threat. He turned to face me. Tomorrow, I meet with Marchetti. We negotiate terms. I make clear that hurting you or anyone I care about means war he can't afford. He'll back down because he's pragmatic and violence is expensive. But until then, you stay here. Safe. Protected. And after? After you've dealt with Marchetti? After we continue exactly as we have been. He crossed to me, taking my hands. Unless you've changed your mind. Unless tonight made you realize this life isn't what you want. I looked at our joined hands, his larger ones enveloping mine completely. I'm still not running. Even knowing what this means? The danger? The enemies? The fact that people will target you simply because you matter to me? Even knowing all that, I met his eyes. Because here's what I've learned in the past 3 weeks, Ravenna. Everyone's life has risks. Everyone makes enemies. The difference is whether you're facing those risks alone or with someone who has the resources and determination to protect you. And you, for all your dangerous qualities, have both those things in abundance. He pulled me close, his forehead resting against mine. You're remarkable, do you know that? Most people would run, would choose safety over this complicated mess. But you dig in deeper. I restore damaged things for a living, I reminded him. I'm used to messy, complicated work that requires patience and careful handling. Maybe that's what this is. Maybe we're both restoration projects. He laughed, the sound rough but genuine. I like that. The idea that we're repairing each other while pretending to be engaged. Who's pretending? The words escaped before I could stop them. He pulled back just enough to see my face clearly. What? Who's pretending, Ravenna? Because I stopped weeks ago. I stopped the night you taught me to dance, and I realized I trusted you to lead. I stopped when your mother looked at me with respect instead of suspicion, because I was honest with her. I stopped when you admitted you think about me when you wake up, because I've been thinking about you too. So tell me, who's actually pretending here? Serafina? Don't. I pressed a finger to his lips. Don't tell me this is complicated or dangerous or temporary. I already know all that. I know we have 6 more months on the contract. I know this started as mutual problem solving. I know you're not a good man by conventional standards. But I also know that when I'm with you, I feel safer than I've felt in years. And that matters more than any risk. He caught my hand, pressing a kiss to my palm. This isn't just the adrenaline talking, the fear from tonight making you seek comfort. This is 3 weeks of breakfast conversations and dancing lessons, and realizing that the cage you warned me about feels more like sanctuary. I cupped his face. This is acknowledging that somewhere between pretending and protecting, we became something real. And I'm choosing that reality, Ravenna. I'm choosing you. For a long moment, he simply looked at me, his expression cycling through emotions too complex to name. Then he pulled me close, his lips finding mine in a kiss that erased all ambiguity about what we were to each other. It was gentle at first, questioning, seeking permission through execution. But when I deepened the kiss, when my fingers tangled in his hair and pulled him closer, the gentleness transformed into something more urgent, more honest, more real than any performance we'd staged. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his smile was devastating. So much for keeping this professional. Professional ended the night I admitted I wasn't afraid of you. I smiled back. Now we're just 2 people trying to figure out what comes after the pretending stops. And what comes after? His thumb traced my lower lip. When the 6 months end and the contract expires? Then we negotiate a new contract. One that has nothing to do with Isabella Marchetti or your family obligations. One that's just about you and me and whatever we're building that doesn't fit in any previous categories. I can work with that. He kissed me again, softer this time. But first, I need to eliminate Marchetti as a threat. I need to make sure you're safe. Then we can focus on everything else. Then go do that. I stepped back, giving him space. Handle your business. Protect what's yours. I'll be here when you're done. You'll be here? He raised an eyebrow. Not safely somewhere else? Here, I repeated firmly. In your penthouse. In your life. Partners, remember? I'm not running from this. His expression softened with something that looked almost like wonder. Partners, he agreed, against whatever comes next. 3 days later, Ravenna returned from his meeting with Marchetti looking exhausted but satisfied. It's done, he announced, finding me in the library Victoria had unofficially made mine to work in. Marchetti has agreed to cease hostilities in exchange for certain business considerations. You're safe. The threat is neutralized. I set down the manuscript I'd been repairing. Just like that? Negotiations were more complex than that summary suggests. He settled into the chair across from me. But yes, essentially. Marchetti understands that targeting you or anyone close to me means war neither family can afford. He's agreed to focus his attention elsewhere. And Isabella? Will marry someone else who can provide what her father needs. She was never invested in marrying me specifically, just in what the alliance represented. He reached across the table, taking my hand. It's over, Serafina. You're safe. Because you protected me. Because you gave me reason to. His thumb traced circles on my palm. 6 months ago, if someone had told me I'd end up here, genuinely engaged to a manuscript restorer who accidentally locked herself in my viewing room, I would have thought they were insane. Are we genuinely engaged? I asked carefully. Or are we still playing roles? We're genuinely something. His smile was slight but real. What exactly that something is, I think we're still figuring out. But the contract expires in 5 months, and I find myself not wanting you to leave when it does. Good. I squeezed his hand. Because I find myself not wanting to leave either. Then we have 5 months to transform our arrangement into something more permanent, something neither of us needs to escape from. A marriage of convenience that becomes inconveniently real, I observed. Victoria will be delighted. My mother already considers you family. She's been not so subtly suggesting we accelerate the wedding timeline. He pulled me into his lap, an easy intimacy we'd developed over the past weeks. What do you think? Should we give the gossips what they want? A real wedding? My pulse quickened. Ravenna, that's practical, he finished. We're already living together, already partners in every way that matters, already protecting each other's interests. Why not make it official? Because official is permanent. Contracts expire. Marriages don't. Marriages absolutely expire. His voice was wry. Just through different mechanisms. But I'm not asking you to marry me today, Serafina. I'm asking if you'd consider it. If somewhere in the next 5 months you might be willing to transform our theatrical engagement into actual marriage. I looked at him, this man who'd promised to protect me and had kept that promise, who'd given me workspace and safety and partnership when I'd needed all three, who'd somehow become the person I thought about first when I woke and last before sleeping. Ask me again in 5 months, I said finally, when the contract expires and I'm choosing you without any strategic benefit. When it's just us deciding who we want to be rather than who we need to be to survive our respective situations. Ask me then, and I'll give you an answer. Fair. He kissed me softly. 5 months. And then, Serafina Chen, I'm going to ask you properly. With a ring I chose because it suits you, not because it belonged to my grandmother. With a proposal that has nothing to do with business arrangements or family obligations. Just you and me and the future we're building. I'll look forward to it. I smiled against his lips. But for now, can we just enjoy these 5 months? Can we stop worrying about contracts and timelines and what comes next, and just be? We can absolutely just be. He stood, lifting me with him. Starting with being people who take advantage of having the rest of the day free. What do you want to do with this unexpected freedom? Show me more of your watch collection, I said impulsively. The viewing room where we met. I want to understand what you love the way you understand my work. His smile was brilliant, unguarded. "I can do that. Come on." He led me through the penthouse to his private viewing room, the space where this entire arrangement had begun. In the 3 weeks since that night, I'd never returned here. But now, standing among the illuminated displays of rare timepieces, I understood something about him I'd missed before. "These aren't about wealth," I said, examining a particularly intricate pocket watch. "They're about preservation, about keeping pieces of history alive. You collect them for the same reason I restore manuscripts." "Exactly." He came to stand behind me, his arms wrapping around my waist. "Every piece here represents someone's life work, someone's dedication to a craft that was becoming obsolete even as they perfected it. I save them because they deserve to be saved, because time passes regardless, but how we mark that passage matters." "We're more alike than I thought." I leaned back against him. Two people trying to save what others might discard. Maybe that's why this works between us. Maybe. His lips found my temple. Or maybe it works because we stopped pretending and started being honest. Either way, Serafina, I'm grateful you locked yourself in this room. Grateful for every minute since then. Even when I'm difficult? Especially then. I felt his smile against my skin. You push back when I need it. You're soft when I forget how to be. You're exactly what I needed without knowing I needed it. We stood there among the watches, marking time in our own way, and I realized that what had started as a desperate bargain had become something neither of us could have predicted. Partnership, safety, and something that felt dangerously close to love. 5 months until the contract expired. 5 months to be sure this was real and not just the performance we'd gotten too good at maintaining. But standing in his arms in the room where we'd met, I was already sure. I was his, and he, whether he'd fully acknowledged it yet, was mine. The cage he'd warned me about had become sanctuary. The protection he'd offered had become partnership, and the arrangement that was supposed to be temporary had become the foundation of something permanent. All because I'd fled from one dangerous man and accidentally locked myself in a room with another. Sometimes, I thought, the best futures begin with mistakes. The manuscript before me was 14th century, delicate and precious, its vellum pages demanding the same careful attention I'd given to restoring my relationship with Ravenna. The work required patience, precision, and the acceptance that some damage couldn't be completely erased, only carefully repaired until the cracks became part of the beauty. "Still working?" Ravenna's voice came from the doorway of what had officially become my restoration studio. Not in the penthouse anymore, but in a building he'd acquired specifically for this purpose. Space for me to work, to teach, to build the legacy I'd always dreamed of. Almost done for today. I carefully set aside my tools, removing my magnification glasses. "How was your meeting?" "Productive." He crossed to me, his hand finding the small of my back in a gesture that had become instinctive. "Marchetti Sr. has officially retired. Isabella's husband is taking over the family operations. The transition is complete." "So we're really safe? No more threats?" "As safe as anyone in this life." He pulled me close, his lips finding my temple. Which is to say, not entirely, but significantly more than we were. I turned in his arms, studying his face. 6 months past our contract expiration, 3 months into our actual marriage. The one we'd chosen rather than the one we'd pretended. And I still sometimes couldn't believe this was real. "I have something to show you," I said, taking his hand and leading him to my desk. On it sat a small leather-bound book, newly restored. It arrived last week. A client found it in an estate sale, thought I might be interested. Ravenna picked it up carefully, examining the binding. "What is it?" "A collection of Renaissance love letters, all from one man to one woman over 20 years. Some were written during courtship. some during marriage, some during periods of separation. I leaned against the desk, watching his face as he opened to a marked page. "Read the one I've flagged." He read silently, his expression softening. The letter was simple, honest. "What began as arrangement has become my greatest choice. You are partner and home, challenge and comfort. The unexpected grace that transformed what I thought I understood about love. Time reveals truth, and the truth revealed is that I would choose you again and again, regardless of circumstance." He wrote this 15 years into their marriage. I said quietly, after they'd survived wars, financial ruin, the loss of children, after everything that should have broken them. And still, he wrote about choosing her. Ravenna set the book down gently, then turned to face me fully. "Is this your way of telling me something, Serafina?" "It's my way of saying that what we have, this messy, complicated, born from desperation partnership, it's real. It was real when we were pretending, and it's definitely real now. And whatever comes next, whatever new complications arise because of who you are and who I am, I'll keep choosing this. Keep choosing you." He pulled me close, his embrace fierce and protective. "5 months ago, you asked me to wait until the contract expired to propose properly, to make sure what we had was real rather than strategic. I remember. I've been carrying the ring around ever since, waiting for the right moment." He released me enough to reach into his pocket, producing a small velvet box. "But I'm done waiting for perfect timing, Serafina. I want to give this to you now, not as a surprise, not as a romantic gesture, just as acknowledgement of what we both already know." He opened the box, revealing not an elaborate diamond, but a simple band, silver with delicate engravings of vines and flowers, clearly antique. This was made in the 1600s, a scholar's ring, given to his wife who illuminated manuscripts while he translated texts. "I found it 3 months ago and knew it was yours." Tears blurred my vision as he slid it onto my right hand, the opposite hand from his grandmother's emerald, which I still wore. "It's perfect. Partners," he said softly. "In every way that matters, until time stops marking our passage." "Until time stops," I agreed, kissing him with all the certainty I'd built over 8 months of choosing each other daily. "Though I hope we have several decades before then." "Several decades," he agreed against my lips. "At minimum. I have extensive plans for our future, Mrs. Ravenna." "Do you now?" "Extensive." His smile was wicked and warm. "Starting with taking you home and showing you exactly how grateful I am that you locked yourself in my viewing room and gave me excuse to offer you sanctuary. That sanctuary came with a lot of complications. The best things do." He pulled me toward the door. "Come on, Marco's waiting. We have dinner with my mother, and she has opinions about the foundation board meeting next week that she wants to share." "Your mother always has opinions. And you love her for it." I did. Somewhere in these 8 months, Victoria had become not just ally but family. The kind of family I'd stopped believing I'd have after my grandmother died. Loud, opinionated, fiercely protective family that argued at dinner and showed up unannounced and made sure I knew I belonged. "I love you for it too," I said as we reached the car. "All the complications and dangers and unexpected grace. I love you, Ravenna." "I know." He kissed me once more before Marco opened the door. "I've known since you told me you weren't running, since you chose partnership over safety, since you made sanctuary out of a cage. I love you too, Serafina, more than I thought I was capable of loving anyone." We slid into the car, his arm around me, my head on his shoulder. Through the window, the city glittered with possibility, the same city where I'd run from one man and into the arms of another, where desperation had transformed into partnership, theater into truth, and a hastily made bargain into the foundation of everything. 8 months from a closet to sanctuary. 8 months from stranger to husband. 8 months from contract to choice. And a lifetime ahead to keep choosing each other, complications and all. Sometimes the best futures really do begin with mistakes. With running from danger into different danger, and discovering that the second danger came with arms strong enough to hold you, resources to protect you, and the willingness to transform a cage into home. Sometimes you lock yourself in a closet fleeing one man and find yourself choosing another. And sometimes that choice becomes the best decision you'll ever make.